Dawn, September 1st, 1939. The chill along the Vistula carried an unfamiliar weight. Lieutenant Jan Nowak watched the horizon near Wieluń flicker with strange orange light. Moments later, the sky roared. The Luftwaffe descended like iron hawks. Explosions tore through cobbled streets, a symphony of fire and terror. The wireless crackled with disbelief. Germany had attacked. "To your posts!" Jan shouted, his heart pounding as columns of smoke darkened the morning sun. Villagers ran, clutching children and half-packed belongings, bewildered by the suddenness of hell unleashed. The world had gone mad, and Poland stood alone in the path of its storm. By afternoon, the air reeked of oil and cordite. The future, once uncertain, now bled red beneath trembling skies. On the Baltic coast, at the secluded Polish military transit depot of Westerplatte, dawn's quiet was shattered by naval gunfire. The battleship Schleswig-Holstein thundered against 7 days of defiant Polish resistance. Surrounded, outgunned, Lieutenant Sucharski and his men refused surrender. Jan Nowak, hearing their transmission over shortwave, felt a surge of pride and dread. "We still hold," the coded signal declared. Each explosion near Gdansk echoed like a heartbeat of courage. Smoke rolled over the sand dunes as the defenders fought room to room, faces blackened with soot and resolve. Ultimately, when ammunition ran dry, they saluted the flag one last time before destruction consumed their post. For Jan, their defiance became legend, a symbol that Poland would never yield in silence.
September 8th, 1939. Warsaw trembled. The German panzers closed in, thunder filling the avenues. Jan led a squad through the capital's shattered streets, dodging falling masonry and sniper fire. "We hold until the last," his commander barked, wiping dust from his face. The old city became a labyrinth of barricades, civilians passing ammunition in trembling hands, priests blessing the wounded amid flames licking cathedral walls. Each night the city glowed red, defiant but doomed. When the final shells fell on September 28th, silence replaced the roar, and smoke hung low over broken domes. Jan pressed his hand to a burned letter from home and whispered, "We saw the dawn of destruction, and still we stood." Dawn of September 17th brought a second shadow. Soviet forces crossed Poland's eastern frontier. Jan, already weary from weeks of battle, stared in disbelief as red-starred tanks rolled through misty fields. "We are betrayed from both sides," whispered one soldier. The bitter wind carried the sound of engines and the smell of diesel. Another invader, claiming liberation but delivering conquest. Polish troops split, some fleeing to Romania, others continuing a hopeless fight. Jan gathered his men. "We will reach the south, whatever it takes." The retreat through the forests was harsh, punctuated by the cries of refugees and distant gunfire. A nation once proud was now carved apart, its heart bleeding under 2 empires. Through rain and mud, Jan's unit moved south toward Hungary, seeking escape and a chance to fight again. Bridges lay shattered, roads clogged with wagons and quiet despair. At night, the men huddled near faint fires, sharing scraps of bread. "We'll see Warsaw again," one whispered, though all knew it was a dream. By the border, the sound of distant pursuit kept them restless. When they finally crossed into Hungary under the cover of darkness, the stars above seemed almost merciful. The Polish soldiers laid down their weapons, not in surrender, but in promise to return. Jan looked back toward the north, whispering, "This isn't the end.
It was only exile's beginning. Interned in Hungary, Jan and a handful of comrades planned their escape westward. Guided by railway workers sympathetic to their cause, they made their way through Yugoslavia and across the Mediterranean toward France. Each border held danger, Gestapo agents, informants, endless papers and whispers. For Poland's freedom, Jan repeated like a prayer. By spring 1940, they reached Paris, where a new Polish army formed under General Sikorski. It felt like rebirth amid exile. The tricolor flags, the rifles, the familiar songs, all carried the memory of home. France was preparing for its own test, and Jan once more strapped on his weapon, ready to fight anew. June 1940. The German blitzkrieg struck again, unstoppable. In the fields of Champagne, Jan commanded a Polish platoon fighting alongside retreating French troops. The air vibrated with artillery, lines collapsing, columns burning. "Hold them here!" he shouted into the din. For days they resisted amid chaos. Then came the order, withdraw. France was lost. Paris fell soon after. Standing by the Seine, Jan looked upon the silent city under occupation, his heart heavy. "Twice displaced, yet unbroken," he murmured. He joined thousands of Poles boarding ships to Britain, their spirits hardened. The struggle for Europe's future would continue across the Channel. In Britain, the air smelled of sea and coal. Jan trained with Polish forces regrouping under new banners, their laughter mixing with resolve. "We fight until it's done," said Captain Zielinski, as coastal sirens howled overhead. The summer of 1940 brought the Battle of Britain. Polish pilots soared into legend, defenders of the sky. Jan, meanwhile, prepared for ground service, drilling on wind-swept fields of Scotland. Letters from home spoke of occupation, repression, vanished families. Each word steeled his resolve. Beneath gray skies, among strangers who called him brother, Jan found purpose again. Poland would rise once more, though miles and oceans separated them. By 1941, news filtered back. Resistance had bloomed within occupied Poland. Coded messages described sabotage, rail attacks, and secret education. Jan volunteered for special training with the Checheni, Poland's elite paratroopers. In a dim London room, he traced homebound drops on a map. "We return through the night," whispered his instructor. The thought of parachuting into darkness both thrilled and terrified him. Under moonlight, aircraft engines warmed for one more impossible mission. Jan's eyes fixed on the horizon, his nation alive in shadow, her sons preparing to fight from within the enemy's grasp. Winter 1941 settled cold and silent. As Europe burned, Jan stood at the edge of a runway, ready to leap back into occupied land. Somewhere beyond those clouds lay Poland, scarred but defiant. "For those who cannot speak," he whispered. The engines thundered to life, their sound a promise of return. History would remember the invasion's first year as the world's descent into darkness, but within that blackness sparks of courage endured. Jan's leap into the night was more than a mission. It was hope incarnate, the unyielding soul of a nation determined to see another dawn.